In this video, I'm going to show you how to launch your own Amazon EMR cluster, and EMR stands for Elastic Map Reduce. It is a way of speeding up and making a cluster starting process easier by using one of Amazon's predefined deployment software apps, I guess. And it just makes it a lot easier. And so this is how I always do it. If you wanted more fine-grained control, you could go to EC2 directly and deploy your own instances and do all the startup yourself. So it's really up to you and what your purposes are. So to go ahead and make my EMR cluster, I go to Services and EMR like I have with the other ones. And so once I'm with EMR, you can see all the clusters I've created before. But I'm going to go ahead and make a new one here. So I go to the Create Cluster button and click it. And now I am going to go to Advanced Settings to have more control over things. So first, for this purpose, I'm going to use Zeppelin, and I'm going to use the most recent version of EMR. I'm also going to use Spark, and I use Ganglia, which is a cluster monitoring front end that you can use. But mainly Spark and Zeppelin are the important ones here. After I click that, I'm going to go ahead and load a Spark config file from an Amazon S3 bucket. My config file is pretty simple. It just tells Spark to maximize resource allocation and to allow for large result sizes. So as you can see, I tell Spark to go ahead and load the config file from S3. I don't add any extra steps. I go ahead and click Next. And this next screen is where things can get a little bit confusing, and I'll try to make things as easy as possible. So here is where you can choose exactly what instance types you want in your cluster. And an instance type, you can think of it as just a computer. Each instance type is going to have a different set of properties. Some of them are going to be memory optimized, some of them are going to be storage optimized, and they're going to have different memory and different cores and so on and so forth. And of course, the machines that have the more power are going to be more expensive. And now Amazon charges you, I believe, a set price, or if you're going to go ahead and do a spot price, they set you that spot price based on the number of hours you use the machine per core. I usually go for cheaper instances and use more of them in this case, especially if you're a little unsure of exactly what resources your cluster is going to use. And I always use spot prices because I find that they're a lot cheaper, and I have not had any problems with being kicked out or anything using spot instances. So I'm also going to make this root volume size be the maximum, which is 100. To be totally honest, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I make it as large as possible, and it doesn't really charge me much else from what I understand. So I go ahead and I'm going to keep the M3X large machines there, but these are just the other lists that you can choose from, and you can see all the different options. So for the spot price, it's kind of like this bidding mechanism that you can use. If you just Google Amazon spot prices, you can understand them. But I usually look at the price and I choose something that is slightly larger than that price. From what I understand, you put a bid in for the maximum price that you're okay with paying for a spot instance, and they will give you what the current rate is for the instance, as long as it is lower than your maximum price. So as you saw, the price was around 0.057 cents, and so that's the price I'll likely be charged for running this cluster. Another thing you can consider when building your cluster is the number of instances. When you're just trying out making your cluster for the first time, it might be a good idea to use a small number of instances so that if you mess up, it doesn't cost you too much. But again, depending on the task at hand and what you want and how quickly you want it done, you can change the number of slave instances that you use. And right now I just kept it at the default, which is 2, but for real applications, I use anywhere from 10 to 20 typically. So now I give my cluster a name and I make it very unique. It's called Spark Cluster. And I leave all the logging and stuff on, but again, you can change that. You can use tags if you know how to use them. I've never really found them that useful. And lastly, this is where your Amazon EC2 key pair is going to come in. And I'm going to go ahead and select the key pair that I have. And if you you should use the one that you created in the previous step. And so now it's off and running, and you can see that the cluster is starting up, and this is the part where you just kind of have to wait a little bit for things to start going, and it'll provision, and then it'll bootstrap, and then it's going to go ahead and start.